Grab a cozy blanket and your favorite warm drink. We are taking a slow, slightly sarcastic, and deeply human walk through the deadliest wars of the 21st century. No robot jargon, just a historical bedtime story about how humanity keeps tripping over its own shoelaces. The end of history that wasn't. Let me set the scene. It is the year 2000. Y2K was a dud. Frosted tips were acceptable, and a political theorist named Francis Fukuyama famously claimed we had reached the end of history. His idea was that Western liberal democracy had won the ideological lottery. We were supposed to glide into a peaceful, globalized utopia. Spoiler alert, we didn't. Fukuyama's prediction aged about as well as a gallon of milk left out in the Nairobi sun. Think of it like deciding to start a diet. You throw away all your junk food on Sunday night, proudly declaring an end to your bad habits. By Tuesday morning, you are stress-eating a dozen donuts in your car. Humanity's peaceful era ended much the same way. After the attacks of September 11th, 2001, open warfare between actual nation-states became rare, but we just traded it for terrorism, ethnic conflicts, and messy civil wars. We are now sitting here in April 2026, looking back at a quarter century of chaos. Grab a cup of chamomile tea, get comfortable, and let's walk through the grim but important history of how we got here. The Second Congo War, 1998 to 2003, the massive bar brawl. If you want to talk about the deadliest conflict of this century, you have to look at one that started in the previous century. The Second Congo War, often called Africa's First World War, was an absolute nightmare. Imagine a massive bar brawl where someone throws a punch and suddenly 9 different tables join the fight, mostly just to steal the unattended wallets. The Rwandan genocide and the fall of Zairian President Mobutu Sese Ko set the stage. In 1997, rebel leader Laurent Kabila took over, renamed the place the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, and promptly started a war with the very people who helped him get the job. Talk about burning your bridges before you even cross them. The eastern third of the DRC turned into a battlefield that rivaled World War I. 9 countries sent armies. Angola, Namibia, Chad, Sudan, and Zimbabwe backed Kabila. Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda backed the rebels. It wasn't just professional armies fighting. It quickly devolved into sheer looting and horrific violence against civilians. An estimated 3 million people died, mostly from disease and starvation caused by the chaos. The Syrian civil war, a toxic apartment building. When the Arab Spring rolled around, people were hopeful. Regimes in Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt were falling, but Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, looked at the protests and decided to double down on brutality. It is like living in an apartment building where one tenant is setting off fireworks indoors. Instead of calling the fire department, the landlord starts throwing gasoline on the flames. Assad's brutal crackdown turned the protest into a massive civil war. This chaos created a beautiful, cozy home for terrible groups like ISIS to set up shop. Assad used horrific barrel bombs and chemical weapons on his own people. Eventually, the neighbors got involved. Russia stepped in to help Assad in 2015, turning the tide for a while. For years, it looked like Assad had won, with the country reduced to rubble. But history loves a plot twist. In late 2024, Assad's international support completely collapsed. A rebel offensive led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham strolled right into Damascus. Assad fled, and the rebels took the capital in December 2024. The human cost? Unfathomable. Over 600,000 direct deaths, and life expectancy plummeted from 70 years to 55. The Darfur conflict, the ignored HOA dispute back in 2003, rebel groups in Western Sudan's Darfur region took up arms against Omar al-Bashir's government in Khartoum. Bashir's response was essentially to hire the worst neighborhood bullies, a militia known as the Janjaweed, to burn everything to the ground. The U.S. government later called it the first genocide of the 21st century. The Janjaweed conducted a targeted campaign of ethnic cleansing, killing at least 300,000 people and displacing millions. It took until 2008 for the UN and African Union to send a peacekeeping force. In 2009, the International Criminal Court, ICC, finally issued an arrest warrant for Bashir. I can barely get the city to fix a pothole, but it's staggering how long it takes global authorities to address actual war crimes. The Iraq War. Kicking a hornet's nest, the Iraq War. Following the horror of 9/11, US officials decided it was time to deal with Iraq's Saddam Hussein. This is the geopolitical equivalent of kicking a hornet's nest because you heard a rumor there was a bear inside. The US claimed Hussein had links to Al-Qaeda and weapons of mass destruction. Both claims turned out to be completely false. In March 2003, the US and a coalition of the willing invaded. The actual military takeover took about a month. But then came the insurgency. You cannot just dismantle a country's government, army, and infrastructure and expect everyone to hold hands and sing. The sectarian violence that followed gave birth to ISIS. By the time US combat forces left in 2010, thousands of coalition troops were dead. And conservative estimates put Iraqi civilian deaths at 85,000, though the real number is likely way higher. The Afghanistan war cleaning a spill with a dirty mop. The Afghanistan war started with a very clear, understandable goal. Go after the people who planned 9/11s. The US started bombing the Taliban in late 2001 because they were giving Osama bin Laden a safe place to crash. By December 2001, the Taliban was ousted, but trying to fix Afghanistan by endlessly occupying it was like trying to clean a spill with a dirty mop. You just end up spreading the mess around. The Taliban retreated to the mountains, regrouped, and started using improvised explosive devices, EIDs. They funded their comeback by growing an absurd amount of opium poppies. The war dragged on for decades. Tens of thousands of Afghan civilians, police, and troops died, along with over 3,500 NATO coalition troops. The war against Boko Haram, the HOA president from hell. Let's move over to Nigeria. In 2002, an Islamist militant group called Boko Haram popped up. Their name literally translates to Westernization is sacrilege. At first, they were just obscure extremists. But in 2009, after clashes with police, the Nigerian government clamped down hard with extrajudicial killings. This completely backfired. By 2010, Boko Haram was attacking schools, churches, and civilians. They famously kidnapped nearly 300 schoolgirls in 2014, making global headlines. They turned from a small terror cell into a full-blown insurgency, destroying entire cities. Troops from neighboring Cameroon, Chad, Benin, and Niger had to step in. At least 11,000 civilians died, and over 2 million were displaced because of this madness. The Yemeni civil war, fighting over a crashing car. Yemen's civil war is a tragic mess. During the Arab Spring, an uprising forced out the longtime president Ali Abdullah Saleh. Think of it like two guys fighting over the steering wheel while the car is careening off a cliff. Saleh's Vice President Hadi took over but couldn't keep control. Houthi rebels from the north and Al-Qaeda militants in the south swooped in. By 2015, the Houthis took the capital, Sana'a, and Hadi fled. Then Saudi Arabia stepped in, leading a coalition to bomb the Houthis, who were heavily backed by Iran. The result? One of the worst humanitarian crises on the planet. By 2021, over 375,000 people were dead, mostly from starvation and easily treatable diseases because the country's infrastructure was destroyed. The Russia-Ukraine war. The bully meets MMA in 2014. Ukraine kicked out its pro-Russian president. Russia's Vladimir Putin didn't like this, so he sent disguised troops to annex Crimea. It is the classic schoolyard bully move. The bully steals your lunch, and when the teachers aren't looking, he claims the lunchbox was always his. Things simmered as a frozen conflict in eastern Ukraine for years, leaving 14,000 dead. Then came February 2022. Putin launched a full-scale invasion, expecting to take the capital Kyiv in a few days. But the bully didn't realize the victim had been taking MMA classes. Ukraine fought back fiercely. The war became a brutal, grinding artillery slugfest. Russia bombed civilians indiscriminately. After more than 3 years of fighting, Roughly 1 million Russian troops had been killed or wounded, and Ukraine's population was devastated, with millions displaced. The Israel-Hamas war, the century-old feud, finally, we reached the most recent devastation. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas launched a horrific coordinated attack from the Gaza Strip into Israel, killing around 1,200 people and taking over 240 hostages. It was the deadliest day in Israel's history. Israel responded with a massive military campaign in Gaza. The devastation was absolute. As 2024 rolled on, the conflict threatened to pull in the whole region. Israel managed a wild intelligence operation in September 2024, blowing up thousands of Hezbollah pages in Lebanon, followed by strikes that killed Hezbollah's leader. The international community grew extremely loud about the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. The ICC even issued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders. Things hit a boiling point in late 2025 when Israel struck Hamas negotiators in Doha, Qatar. Even staunch U.S. allies balked at that. 1. Mercifully, by October 2025, a ceasefire was finally agreed upon, but only after more than 67,000 Palestinians had been killed and the region was left completely scarred. Frequently asked questions: why are civil wars so much deadlier than traditional wars now? Because the lines are blurred. In a traditional war, armies fight en masse. Battlefield. In a civil war, the battlefield is the local grocery store, the neighborhood school, and the town square. Civilians bear the absolute brunt of the violence, and infrastructure, like hospitals and water plants, gets destroyed, leading to massive death from disease and starvation. What was the deadliest conflict mentioned? The Second Congo War. It claimed an estimated 3 million lives between 1998 and 2003, largely due to starvation and disease caused by the total collapse of the region's infrastructure. Has the United Nations been effective in stopping these wars? Well, it's complicated. And by complicated, I mean usually disappointing. The UN has provided massive humanitarian aid and some peacekeeping forces, like in Darfur, but they are often blocked by politics in the Security Council. They are better at bandaging the wounds than stopping the fight. How did the Syrian civil war finally end? According to the historical timeline up to late 2024, Assad's foreign support collapsed, allowing rebel forces led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham to sweep into Damascus in December 2024, forcing Assad to flee. Hey, history buff, if my sleepy, sarcastic fireside chats about the darker parts of human history kept you awake, you should totally subscribe to my weekly newsletter. We tackle history's biggest blunders with a cup of coffee and a lot of common sense. Drop your email below and let's keep learning from the past so we hopefully stop repeating it. Which battle? The deadliest